This is a tour of my second city I made on SketchUp. It's probably also my least favourite city I made, probably because the only reason I like the first one more was because it was the very first one I ever made, and it's the only one that's used islands, which I kind of like the layout of, with bridges connecting them to the city and stuff like that, and it had things that I haven't done in this one, like terrain and, you know, ports and stuff like that. This is the first city that is one giant landmass. It's also the first one I started to use sort of proper textures for buildings, especially for the side of buildings. Obviously a lot of it's based off the things I learned when I made the first one, so the basic way of drawing the roads and making the buildings and stuff like that, and there are still quite a few basic textures within it, and it's also on a seafront, which the other one was at parts, so there was a beach and stuff like that. But this actually has a rather weird origin story of how I came to decide to make it, but I think it's good that I did it because it showed what certain methods worked and certain methods didn't work, and it led me to, you know, create cities more efficiently and just to create more in the first place, because had I never made this, I may have never done more than the first city, which looking back is now severely lacking in detail compared to my current standards. So as an overview, it's actually not the biggest city anymore, really. If you look, you can see the whole thing quite clearly in this. It's got some parks, lots of random jumbly streets and roads, and the buildings are all higgledy-piggledy, and really, and there's obviously some tall ones in the middle and some tall ones by the seafront. But the way this all started was I wanted to try a technique of overlaying like an actual map of a city and then tracing the roads on to get a road design that I didn't have to think it through or anything. So I actually used a map of Portsmouth in England to try and map over to get streets, but I think the biggest mistake I made was it was very tedious and cumbersome process to actually trace and draw the roads, because the image overlay didn't work too well. Plus I didn't really check to see which roads were which, as in there's some really narrow roads and some really massive roads, but they just kind of connect and they have no relevance over one another, and it doesn't really make much sense. And then another bad thing is that when you have these really random roads, which are common in Britain, it makes it a lot harder to draw buildings in SketchUp easily and efficiently and quickly. So there's just a lot of random lines, and the building shapes don't make a lot of sense in certain parts, and just like here, like there's curves and stuff all over the place, and the buildings just feel a little too organic. So that's the thing that I kind of tried out to see if it worked, and then I stayed away from it because it just doesn't work properly as a good looking city design. But yeah, once that was done, I mean, the process was still the same as all the other cities I've done, where I drew out all the roads and then I drew all the buildings, but I mean, it was pretty simple back here because it was just draw lines intersecting the blocks. There were barely any pavements. For some reason I have some pavements like here, but the majority of the streets don't actually have any pavements like here. So it's, again, like really basic block design, and the streets just make no sense. I think like down here there's this really narrow street with tall buildings, and then it opens up like that. It doesn't make much sense. Plus some of the buildings are actually sort of gigantic and take up entire blocks, like these ones, and then there's a random tree for some reason. But yeah, once I extruded them all, I started texturing with basic colors like concrete for the roofs and stuff, and parks, the greens and the yellows for the beaches. But I did realize that I should try importing building textures, and I can't remember what made me decide to do it, or what made me realize I could do it, because it took quite a lot of work to figure out how to import them. but I did, and I downloaded a bunch, and it made such a difference on how good the city looks. Like these buildings, when they have these textures, it adds so much life and color to the city. But then another problem was I did not scale the textures at all. So you've got these buildings here with gigantic windows, and then somewhere nearby, like just here, is this building with teeny tiny windows, and I don't think any of them are correctly scaled at all. I usually scaled them to about 3 meters per floor, maybe more, but these ones are completely random. As you can see, like the difference between these two is pretty noticeable. But it was just a start, really, to prove that it could be done and that it worked. And I did employed the same method that I use today, where I kind of did the large noticeable buildings first, then kind of scattered the smaller buildings with textures. So I didn't texture every single building. There's actually quite a lot of land here that's untextured. Me trying to create a smooth blend from urban to grasslands doesn't work too well. There really aren't that many points of interest in this city that I could show you, like in my first and fifth city. There was a lighthouse island, which is actually it was in my third city, like my first my most popular series on YouTube had this, but then I erased it, and you can actually watch that in the playthrough at the end. I erased the island at the end just so that it's not identical to the third city, because these two cities actually use the exact same template with this coastline and this square, and that's why they actually have the same file name, except one is a test version, because it was me testing whether I could use this map overlay technique, and I couldn't, so I stopped. So that's a point of interest. And then, you know, I've got sort of tall, fancy buildings at the coastline, probably hotels or something, and then I did do quite a few little coloured signs and billboards here, just to add a little bit of life to the city. Here's the city centre, I guess, the downtown area, obviously lacking in detail, and it was really random, the shape and everything. It didn't really work, but there you go. Over here I have some really lazy sort of estate housing, trying to make rows of houses really quickly, because after the attempts at making a good street layout, I kind of gave up on the city. So I just wanted to get it done to a certain extent, because this was done in a few days. It did not take long to do. It was shortly before I actually started working on my third city. Here's some more of the lazy housing attempts. It's kind of like post-war housing streets. Does not look nice at all. And the parks don't really change, and they haven't really changed as I've moved on to different projects. But yeah, those are the main things to show on how the textures are different and how basic the street layout was and how it was made and stuff like that. I know I haven't really been giving this city a lot of praise, and that's probably justified. I mean, you can look at the city if you want on the 3D warehouse. There'll be a link in the description, but that's really up to you. I would not consider it my best work at all. So yeah, it's there to look at, and it's still important, because I think it showed me the most efficient ways, or really the most inefficient ways to do things, so that I knew how to be more efficient in future. And it's always good to just, you know, make experiments and try things out, and I think it's helped to make my cities better today. So yeah, thanks for watching. I will do a tour of my third and fourth city as well. Those will obviously be coming out soon, so keep your eyes out for those. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you later.